narcissists want former targets of abuse to fall into the purity trap. It's because when a former target of abuse decides to go no contact with their primary, their secondary narcissistic abusers, but then also decides to go no contact with anyone who displays even one little toxic trait, well, that is falling into the purity trap. And it is self-sabotage. And I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say Bob is working in an office and he was hired by Susan. But let's say Susan quits and she has moved on to another company, and now he's a bit exposed because he doesn't have the protection of his former boss, Susan, who hired him. What might happen is another manager is hired, and let's say it's Tina. And let's say Tina doesn't like Bob, but Tina has never been able to get Bob fired or cause any trouble for Bob because Bob had the protection of his former supervisor, Susan. Well, what's Bob going to do in a situation like this? What I would recommend is that Bob start building alliances, building relationships with other people in the company. And that includes Tina. A lot of people will say, no way, why would you tell Bob to align with toxic, nasty people? Well, it's because some of us need to keep our job. We have a car payment. We have a house payment. We can't afford to lose our health insurance. That's why. The real point of this entire video is about this mindset that a lot of former targets of narcissistic abuse fall into, and it's called the purity trap. And it means that once the former target of abuse goes no contact with their primary abuser, sometimes their secondary abuser as well, they are all like,
I only hang out with people who are 100% nice. I only am friendly with people who are 100% aligned with my values and everything that I believe in.
Well, hello, unless you are working, you're your own boss, working from home, and you can pay all your own bills, unless that's your situation, then chances are you will have to engage with someone with toxic traits at some point in your daily life. It's not realistic to think that you can go through life completely isolated from the world. It's not healthy, in my opinion. So the reason that a toxic, passive-aggressive manipulator would encourage you to cut contact with anyone who displays a toxic trait, well, I would question that person's motivation. Why are they advising you to do this? Maybe their intent is genuine and they are just encouraging you to set up boundaries and to protect yourself, which is wonderful. But look closer and ask yourself, do I really need to go no contact with my next door neighbor because she has a couple of toxic traits? You have to weigh the pros and cons of that. It might end up causing a lot more problems for you going no contact with your next door neighbor who is not a full-fledged cluster B personality disorder. It's just someone who has some toxic traits. Well, what I recommend is that you learn how to negotiate relationships. You learn how to interact with difficult people. I think that is a much better life strategy than telling yourself and telling other people, just go no contact with everyone who displays a toxic trait. It sounds great, it looks great on paper, but it's not realistic. And I personally think that when someone falls into the purity trap of, you're not 100% pure, therefore I can't communicate with you, you're setting yourself up for a lot more problems. In fact, that's when a former target of abuse is manufacturing and creating problems where they really didn't exist. And who is going to encourage a former target of abuse to do that? Probably a very toxic person. So just think about that, and think about the people in your life who are telling you to go no contact with everybody. There's a big difference between a friend and an ally. A friend is someone who truly shares 99% of your values, and they are role models, and they are a support person for you. That is a friend. An ally doesn't need to be a friend. An ally is someone who you have a common goal with. For example, I love animals, and I might join a rescue group, and those people are allies. We have a common goal. We're out in the world rescuing dogs and cats on the street. Well, those people might have a different value system than me in other areas of their life. And in my opinion, that's not a reason to go no contact with them. For me, I don't think that this is a good long-term life strategy. I would rather put my time and energy into learning how to negotiate my relationship with them, and a chance for me to role model my own values and beliefs, and maybe some of that might rub off on the other person. I don't know. And of course, I'm not talking about putting up with someone who is straight up actively targeting you and trying to cause you emotional harm. There's a difference there. I'm talking about someone who you see occasionally, who displays some toxic traits, and yes, it is irritating to be around people like that. But I say put your time and energy into educating yourself on how to negotiate relationships. And I think that is a lot more empowering and a much better lifelong strategy for success than just putting up your hands and saying, I'm going no contact with every single person that I meet that displays a toxic trait. And hey, if that's how you want to live your life, then I support you, because everyone makes that decision on their own. And I also want to remind people that what one person considers a toxic trait might be different than someone else. There's an area of subjectivity there. Different people have different boundaries. Different people have different value systems. So I personally think that we all have to make that decision on our own, whether or not someone has crossed that line for you personally, the line between you have some toxic traits and you really irritate me, to you are a full-on toxic abuser that I cannot be around. And we all make that decision. And I'm not saying not to have that guideline for yourself, not at all. I'm just saying that I don't think it's realistic to try to cut off contact with every single person that displays a toxic trait. I think that people who do that are self-sabotaging. It's setting yourself up for total isolation, because there's just, in my opinion, no such thing as purity. It doesn't exist. In people, I personally think that everyone has at least one toxic trait. It's just the reality of it. A lot of times, people who are on the path of self-knowledge, the toxic traits will start to decline as a person gains more and more self-knowledge. And you will meet people who are extremely self-aware, and even when they do slip up and hurt someone's feelings or do something that is a little bit toxic, they identify it immediately. They catch it, they correct it, they change it very quickly. And to me, that is a normal, healthy human being. I was at a group setting, this was about 2 years ago, and it was an Australian function. And I think I might have been the only American there, I'm not sure. And I put my foot in my mouth. It was so embarrassing. I'm cringing thinking about it right now. Oh my gosh. I was sitting at a table, a coffee morning, and I blurted out the most embarrassing, tacky, just awful joke. And hello, what was I thinking? I wasn't thinking. And it was about bad teeth and British people. Ooh. I can't even remember exactly what I said. I think I blacked it out because it was so awful. And it was something, I can't even remember. It just had something to do with British people and bad teeth. It just, ooh. So I blurted out this joke, and everyone at the table, was maybe 20 people, total silence, just looking at me like this. And, ooh, okay, you can see we all put our foot in our mouth. We all act like a jackass every once in a while. And so after that, I apologized. Oh my, that was really inappropriate. I apologize for that. So, I mean, I can't imagine if after that event, if everyone in that room said, we're going no contact with you, Sacha, because you acted like a jackass. It's thank goodness people are able to say, hey, we understand that. Every once in a while, someone is going to behave in a toxic way. They're going to be inconsiderate. They're going to be rude. But let's try to negotiate the relationship. So someone at that event could have walked up to me and said, wow, that was a really tacky thing for you to say. I don't really feel comfortable with you telling jokes at our coffee morning anymore. And I would say, I agree. I'm zipping it. The moral of the story is, don't fall into the purity trap. That's my recommendation. I still support get toxic people out of your life. And when I say that, I'm talking about people who have crossed that line from having some toxic traits that are irritating to full on someone who is actively trying to harm you. That's it. As always, stay strong and get toxic people out of your life. Bye. If you gained value from today's video, please give a thumbs up and leave a comment below.